Beloved, healing heart. Do you remember when the wounds felt too deep to ever mend? When grief wrapped around you like winter fog? When trust seemed a distant memory? When your own reflection felt like a stranger? I watched you then, how you carried your broken pieces with such quiet dignity, how you continued to move forward even when the path was shrouded in doubt. Your healing journey hasn't been a straight line, has it? There were days of progress followed by nights of remembering, moments of freedom interrupted by echoes of old pain. Sometimes you questioned if you were healing at all, if these spirals meant failure rather than growth. But darling, healing isn't about perfect forward motion. It's about continuing to tend to yourself with compassion through every season. I've witnessed your courage in facing what needed to be faced, how you've sat with uncomfortable truths instead of running from them, how you've examined inherited patterns with clear eyes and a willing heart, how you've learned to distinguish between voices of wisdom and voices of fear. This isn't small work. It's the mountainous terrain of becoming whole. Your healing hasn't just been about bandaging wounds. It's been about understanding their origins. You've journeyed back to tender beginnings, holding your younger self with the nurturing they deserved but didn't receive. You've untangled the knots of old stories, separating what was truly yours from what was placed upon you. You've reclaimed parts of yourself that were once surrendered in the name of survival or love. And through it all, you've remained open to joy, perhaps the bravest act of all. Despite knowing the risk of hurt, you've continued to welcome beauty, to nurture connection, to believe in possibilities. Your heart, once carefully guarded, now knows how to be both boundaried and available, both protected and present. This journey of healing isn't something you complete and set aside. It's a continuous unfolding, a relationship with yourself that deepens with time. Some days, you'll feel the old aches resurface, and that's not failure. It's an invitation to tend once more to places still seeking your gentle attention. So tonight, I honor every step you've taken on this path, every tear that helped wash away what needed release, every boundary that protected your tender growth, every moment of forgiveness, especially those directed toward yourself. Your healing isn't just for you. It ripples outward, touching everyone you encounter with its quiet wisdom. With profound respect for your journey, your most compassionate self. Dearest, resilient heart. In the quiet moments between heartbeats, I want to honor your extraordinary strength. How bravely you've continued to pulse with hope after each goodbye, each disappointment, each moment when love seemed to slip through your fingers like morning mist. Remember when the pain felt too heavy to carry? When tears fell like autumn rain and the world seemed wrapped in shadow? Even then, beneath the weight of heartbreak, you continue to beat, steady, persistent, alive. Your resilience isn't in never breaking. It's in how you've gathered each fragmented piece, holding them tenderly in the palm of your hands, and carefully crafted something beautiful from what was broken. Like precious kintsugi, your golden scars tell stories of courage, not failure. I marvel at how you've remained soft despite the temptation to harden. How you've kept your chambers open despite knowing the risk. How you've continued to recognize beauty in this world even when everything beautiful seemed to have walked away. Your capacity to heal is not a small magic. It is perhaps your greatest strength. This ability to tend to your own wounds, to nurture hope from the tiniest seed of possibility, to believe that warmth will return even during the coldest seasons of solitude. So tonight, as stars scatter across the evening sky like distant memories, I celebrate you, my resilient, remarkable heart. For every time you've whispered perhaps once more, instead of never again. For every time you've chosen courage over fear. May you continue to beat with purpose, to love without regret, to heal without rushing, and to believe without apology. Your resilience has never been about forgetting the past. It's been about creating a future worthy of your capacity to love. With infinite tenderness and admiration, your truest self. Dearest guardian of your peace, do you remember when your boundaries were like whispers, barely audible even to yourself? When yes tumbled from your lips while your heart quietly pleaded no? When your edges blurred so completely with others that you sometimes forgot where they ended and you began? I've watched you grow from those fragile beginnings into something magnificent, a person who understands that boundaries aren't walls of rejection, but rather sacred circles of self-respect. How brave you've been, learning to voice your limits in a world that often rewards endless giving and silent sacrifice. Each time you've said, "This doesn't work for me," each moment you've chosen discomfort over resentment, each instance you've honored your own capacity, these weren't acts of selfishness, but profound self-preservation. Like a gardener who knows which plants need space to flourish, you've learned to tend to your own roots with wisdom and care. Your boundaries have cost you, haven't they? Relationships that couldn't survive your self-respect, opportunities that demanded too high a price, connections that thrived on your silence rather than your truth. Yet, in that letting go, you've made space for what truly deserves to grow in the fertile soil of your life. I've seen the doubt that visits sometimes, wondering if your limits make you difficult, if your boundaries make you unlovable. But darling, the right people don't ask you to be smaller. They don't require your exhaustion as proof of your devotion. They recognize your boundaries as the outline of your most authentic self, and they honor that precious shape. Continue this sacred practice of saying no to what diminishes so you can say yes to what nourishes. Keep drawing those lines in the sand with steady hands and clear eyes. Trust that your boundaries aren't pushing away connection, they're creating the conditions for real intimacy to flourish. With each limit you express, with each need you articulate, you're not just protecting yourself, you're teaching others how to love you properly. And in that teaching lies the possibility of relationships built on mutual respect rather than depletion, on choice rather than obligation. With profound admiration for your protective wisdom, your most authentic self. Dearest, patient soul, in a world that rushes love like the turning of calendar pages, you have chosen the courage of patience. How remarkable you are, standing steady as seasons change, unwilling to force what must unfold naturally, like wildflowers opening to morning light. I've watched you turn away from convenient almost love, from connections that asked you to shrink, from hearts that offered only fragments when you deserved wholeness. Each time, it wasn't rejection of love. It was reverence for it. There were nights, weren't there, when loneliness wrapped around you like winter fog, when doubt whispered that perhaps your standards were too high, your heart too particular. In those moments, remember how the moon continues her patient journey across the night sky, never rushing to become what she already is, complete even in her changing phases. Your patience isn't passive waiting, it's active wisdom. It's the quiet strength of knowing that authentic love doesn't need to be chased, convinced, or carefully managed. It arrives like dawn after darkness, not because you demanded the sun to rise, but because that is the natural order of things meant to be. See how your patience has protected you from stories that would have ended before they truly began. How it has preserved your tenderness, your truth, your capacity to love without compromise. This is not time wasted, but wisdom gathered, like precious stones along the shore of your becoming. So continue, beautiful soul, to wait with purpose, not as one abandoned at life's station, but as one who understands that the journey's timing holds its own perfection. The love worthy of your depth will recognize the treasure of your patience, not as something to exploit, but something to honor with equal devotion. Until then, find richness in this waiting. Let it be a garden where self-knowledge blooms, where boundaries grow strong as oak trees, where your own company becomes not the absence of another, but the presence of your truest self. With gentle admiration for your waiting heart, your timeless self. Beloved, authentic soul, do you remember all those years you spent folding yourself into shapes that weren't your own? How you learned to quiet your laughter, soften your opinions, and tuck away your dreams, all to fit into the narrow spaces others had carved for you? I watched as you disappeared into relationships that required your authenticity as admission price, how you became a stranger to yourself in the name of being loved. But then, like a wildflower breaking through concrete, your true nature began to reassert itself. First in whispers, then in tentative actions, and finally in choices that honored the person you were created to be. How magnificent it was to witness you reclaiming pieces of yourself that had been set aside. Your peculiar humor, your passionate beliefs, your tender vulnerabilities, all the colors that make you wonderfully and uniquely you. Now I see you choosing differently, gravitating toward connections where your quirks are treasured rather than tolerated, building relationships where your boundaries aren't seen as obstacles, but as sacred outlines of your most honest self. creating a life where authenticity isn't something you summon for special occasions, but the very air you breathe each day. This journey hasn't been without its costs. There were people who preferred your accommodation to your truth, relationships that couldn't withstand the weight of your full presence, moments when standing in your authenticity felt like standing alone. But in that aloneness, you found clarity. That true connection can only be built on the foundation of genuine self-expression. I celebrate how carefully you now tend to your authentic nature, how you listen to the quiet compass of your intuition, how you speak truths that once felt dangerous to acknowledge, how you've learned that revealing yourself, your whole, complex, beautiful self, is not an act of defiance, but an offering of intimacy. Continue this meaningful practice of choosing people who don't require your diminishment, who don't ask you to leave parts of yourself at the door, who recognize that your authenticity isn't something to manage, but something to cherish. In their presence, watch how effortlessly you bloom, how naturally you expand, how completely you can rest in the knowledge that you are loved not despite who you are, but because of it. With boundless admiration for your true nature, your most authentic self.